Do you know who the very first human ancestor was? That we can say with scientific certainty was hunted down and killed by a predator? Most people imagine lions, crocodiles, or saber-toothed cats. But the truth is far more shocking. The first recorded victim in human history didn't die on the ground. The attack came from the sky, and it happened almost 3 million years ago, in the heart of Africa. Our story begins in the vast plains of South Africa, in a place now called Taung. Today it's just a small town in the northwest province, surrounded by cliffs and rocky hills. But back in prehistoric times, this land was alive with strange animals, early humans, and lurking predators. And hidden in the dust of an old limestone quarry, a secret lay buried for millions of years. The story of a child who met a terrifying end. In 1924, a fossil skull was discovered at the Buxton Limeworks near Taung. At first glance, it looked like a child's skull, small and fragile, but ancient. This fossil would become famous as the Taung Child, the very first specimen of a species called Australopithecus africanus, one of our direct ancestors. The skull was tiny, no larger than a small melon. But when scientists studied it, they realized it belonged to a child about 3 or 4 years old who had lived nearly 3 million years ago. This was an extraordinary discovery. Before this fossil, no one even knew such early humans existed in southern Africa. The Taung Child changed science forever, proving that Africa was the cradle of humankind. But as important as that was, there was another mystery locked inside the skull. A mystery that would take decades to uncover. For years, scientists debated how the Taung Child had died. Some believed the bones had simply been buried by natural processes. Others thought carnivores might have scavenged it. But in the 1990s and early 2000s, new studies revealed chilling evidence. Researchers noticed strange puncture holes around the eyes, tiny but deep. The edges of the eye sockets were cracked and scratched in unusual ways. At first, the marks didn't make sense. They didn't match the teeth of leopards or hyenas. They didn't look like crocodile bites either. Something else had happened. Then, a breakthrough. Scientists compared the damage on the Taung Child skull with the feeding patterns of modern raptors, eagles and hawks that hunt monkeys and small animals in Africa today. The match was perfect. The punctures around the eyes lined up exactly with where a giant eagle's talons would pierce when grabbing prey. The scratches across the face matched the marks of a hooked beak tearing flesh. The conclusion was inescapable. The Taung Child had been killed by a bird of prey. Not a lion, not a leopard, not a crocodile, but a massive eagle that swooped from the sky, struck with its claws, and carried the helpless child away. Imagine the scene. The African sun beating down, the child playing near the edge of a cliff or stream, perhaps watched by others of the group. Suddenly a shadow darkens the ground. Powerful wings slice through the air. Before there's time to scream, claws dig deep into the child's face, crushing bone. The bird lifts off, carrying its prize, while terrified eyes watch from below. In moments, it's gone. The child has become prey. This is more than just a story. It's the oldest direct evidence we have of a human ancestor being killed by a predator. The Taung Child is not just a fossil, but a victim. A 3-million-year-old murder mystery, solved by the marks left on bone. But what does this tell us about our history? It reminds us of something we often forget. Early humans were not powerful hunters at first. They were vulnerable. They lived small, they moved carefully, and they were always at risk of being hunted themselves. For millions of years, humans were as much prey as they were predator. Leopards, saber-toothed cats, crocodiles, and yes, even giant birds. All of them shaped our evolution. Living with fear forced our ancestors to adapt. They learned to stay in groups for protection. They developed sharper senses. Over time, they began using tools and weapons not just to hunt, but to defend themselves. Fear was a teacher, and survival was the test. The Taung Child's tragic death is a reminder of how dangerous the ancient world truly was. Let's step back for a moment. Australopithecus africanus, the species of the Taung Child, lived around 2 to 3 million years ago. These were small-bodied humans, standing about 4 feet tall when fully grown. They had long arms, good for climbing trees, and walked upright on 2 legs. They lived in woodlands and savannas, eating fruits, roots, and probably small animals when they could find them. But they had no fire, no weapons, and no safe shelters. In that kind of world, danger was everywhere. Leopards stalked the trees. Crocodiles waded in rivers. Snakes lurked in the grass. And above all, the skies were patrolled by giant eagles, always ready to strike. Even today in Africa, crowned eagles are known to attack monkeys and even children in rare cases. Now imagine eagles of similar or even larger size soaring over ancient South Africa. To a 3-year-old Australopithecus child, they were death from above. The story of the Taung Child also teaches us something about science itself. When the fossil was first discovered, many scientists in Europe doubted it. They thought humans must have evolved in Asia or Europe, not Africa. Some dismissed the skull as just an ape. But over time, evidence grew, and Africa became recognized as the birthplace of humanity. The Taung Child was the first clue in that puzzle. And decades later, the marks of predation revealed a whole new story about the dangers our ancestors faced. Think about it. The oldest known human death we can prove was not natural. It was violent. It was predation, and it was airborne. The image of an eagle carrying off one of our first relatives is haunting, almost cinematic, but it's also humbling, because it reminds us that humans began not as rulers of the world, but as survivors. Over the course of human evolution, predators continued to shape us. Fossils in East Africa show hominin bones with bite marks from leopards and crocodiles. Some sites even suggest early humans scavenged from predator kills, stealing meat when they dared. The balance between hunter and hunted was always delicate, and for the Taung Child, it was fatal. But here is the twist. Without these constant dangers, would humans have ever become what we are today? Fear pushed us to innovate. Predators forced us to gather together, to communicate, to protect one another. The death of one child, though tragic, is part of the larger story of survival. A story that led from fragile little Australopithecines to the modern humans who now tell their tale. So when we look at the Taung Child's skull today, resting in a South African collection, we're not just looking at bone. We're looking at history written in scratches and puncture holes. We're looking at the evidence of the first human ancestor who fell to a predator. And through that, we see the world our ancestors lived in. A world of fear, of survival, and of constant danger from every direction, even from above. The next time you look up at the sky and see a bird circling, remember, long before humans conquered the earth, we were prey. Our story begins not with triumph but with terror. And it was the shadow of wings that fell on us first.